Good morning, this is the Community Economic Development Committee. I am John Weddleton.
Dick Tranning.
Pete.
Pete Peterson. Eric Dean, Jason Cindy Councilman.
Felix Rivera.
Andy Honest, Clerk's Office.
Christopher Constant.
Gina Ashman, Interpreter.
Phil Steyer, she gets elected.
Ryan Yell, Planning Department.
Chris Shirley, Office of Economic Community Development.
Dave Whitfield, Planning Department.
Eliza Muse, Alaska Tobacco Prevention and Control.
Joe Darnell, Behavioral Health, State of Alaska.
Wendy Sailors, Alaska Tobacco Prevention and Control.
Mark Butler, and Distance Canard area.
Alana Community for Interpreter.
All right, thank you. So we have two items on the agenda. The first one is the letter we got, just to discuss the letter we got from Erica McConnell regarding local government jurisdiction and timing of public opinions. And Mandy, you want to review that?
Yeah, so this is actually kind of a minor change, but it'll have, I think, good impacts. Currently, there's a 30-day notice where applicants have to submit their notice of intent to the local governing body and then post it, and they have to let the surrounding residents know. And what AMCO found was 30 days from when they start their application. Typically, they're not finished with the application. Things change, and so it kind of restricts the time frame where the public can legitimately have concerns. Their point was it kind of makes them arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable because the packet isn't complete yet, and they don't really have grounds to have any concerns addressed. And so this change changes that 30-day notice from that initial application date to when the application is deemed complete by the Marijuana Control Office. So that allows the full packet to go out to the public and out to the local governing bodies to review and then have that 30-day period to do comments.
Mandy, thoughts on that? So is this, am I reading this right, public comment?
Yeah, they are.
We missed it?
The comment already closed.
Oh,
They're arbitrary capricious.
that sounds all right.
I love using that word without body because it uses less numbers of times. The marijuana side, alcohol side, sorry.
But the meeting is today, and so that's when it'll be before.
Oh, so we just, now we know? or-
Yeah.
Call it over.
Pretty much.
Okay. And does that impact anything we do?
It will change a little bit of the process. Right now, we receive just the one page that gives us the name of the establishment, the location, and then the licensees or affiliates, and that's kind of it. It's just very basic information. This, I think, is actually gonna be really helpful because we'll get the full packet, we'll get the full information, and actually have it to go through and read their operating plan, read what they're actually gonna do, where it's gonna be, what it's gonna look like, and then be able to have comment on it. And I think we, as the local governing body, have a little bit more of that because we do have that 60-day period as well, but this really impacts the public. So they have more of a full picture to look at before they have to make comments before the deadline ends.
So you won't even know what's coming until it's a complete application?
That's how it appears to be, when it's deemed complete by the board.
Should help our community councils that are always complaining they don't have time. I just wish we had a way to know when it's getting close to getting here. So it gives you guys more, you have a chance to get community councils notified on it.
Yeah.
Does this then add additional time to the applicant's process, do you think? Like, because everything has to be done, then there's an additional 30 days.
I do not know the answer to that.
Do you know how many are where they'll, I guess they would have turned in an application. How many at the state level turn in an application, but then it never
have not received a municipal application for them yet. So I don't get, I think, well, I do, I get just that one page notice, so I do have, I haven't counted those, but I have quite a few of the notice of intent to apply where I haven't received the state application yet. So, probably
I
quite a few.
assume it's gonna send.
Can I supplement
Yeah,
that?
please.
So, we see them on the revenue side, when they file. We closely track that in our revenue meetings. And at the end of July, we had 20 completed state applications. I don't think it's gone up since, but we had 20 completed at the end of July, and only 12 in the through the municipal process. So and that's been pretty constant, but that gap between the state level and municipal level is closing. Something that we keep an eye on, because there's a lot of state level licenses or approvals that have been granted that we haven't seen get all the way through the municipal side yet, and so we're just waiting to take their dollars.
Okay, good. Francis?
And keep in mind that some of those will never come to fruition because
Right.
they're in a residential district, or they, have abandoned it for another site. It's just not gonna proceed.
Like the one in your area, the neighbors, thought they were gonna have
Yeah.
one.
But we got that cleared up now. I mean, they go to the state, if it's a residential area, they learn pretty quick that that's not gonna fly here. Is that correct?
Ryan, what's your?
Kind of on them, I think.
I mean, yeah, it's, the state's requirements are a little different than ours. I mean, they don't get into local zoning laws. So theoretically, could they make it through the state process if they're in a residential area? That possibility exists depending on where in the state they are, but in Anchorage, as soon as they got to the municipal level, they wouldn't even be allowed to apply.
So if you're informed, as soon as before this, as soon as they apply for the state, you get a note. And does that say where they'll be located?
Mhm.
So if you saw it, that's in a residential area, would you let them know that
Yeah.
won't work? So now you won't know until they've gone through the whole
Until
state
it's
thing, and then you say, but it won't work here. So
Yeah.
that's a challenge for the applicants.
Well,
Yeah.
certainly, Mark's suggesting that they send out a one-page notice,
Yeah.
application, applicant.
And that might be
That would be
something
better
that they'll
idea.
still continue to ask them to do for local governing bodies, because it's kind of a process that they've already been doing.
Would you think that Erica would recognize that it was in a residential area and nix the thing in the bud? I mean, so to speak?
Not with the volume. She
Yeah.
has statewide portfolio.
Okay.
And they have reviewers, so.
And they're half-staffed.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just, I think we have to send this recommendation to the state that we're still notified. And then we can wait for the full process to get it to her before we start, but I'd at least like to know ahead of time. So we don't end up what you had in your area. We had some, but they want to start one in the neighborhood. Obviously, once she got that, we would have told them, hey, this isn't gonna fly.
You know, I have a bit of an objection to that whole concept of forcing the applications to be subsequent instead of parallel, right? Because already the application process with the state takes months. And then the application with the muni takes months. And so if those processes can't be in some way concurrent, then the applicants are losing precious time. They're paying rent on buildings that they've had to secure and they can't open, or they're paying mortgages, and we are creating a double burden. And in some ways, these processes are almost identical. And so I think that we should at least ask the state to figure out what processes are parallel that we can be engaged in, as opposed to waiting completely to begin our process. Unless we're just talking about the 30-day notice to communities.
So, this is for, communities and local, so basically the last little paragraph is kind of what's summing it up, where it would move the objection period to be 30 days after the application is deemed complete and submitted to the local government. So it would delay in that the board wouldn't be able to review their applications until that 30-day period.
If we assume that the board at this moment usually gets to them right after they're complete, it might be the case that with their volume, they're already waiting 40 or 50 days.
Yeah, I think that this last paragraph is just a little bit misleading because it's talking about the change to this particular regulation the local government protest is a different section. It's not addressed by this proposed regulation. And 060 protest by local government requires the agency to wait 60 days for local government to protest after they receive notice that the application is deemed complete. So this is saying 30 days. Well, they can't consider an application until 60 days anyways for local government protest. So to me, the way this is stated is almost just a little bit confusing. I think it was just marked and maybe
So,
work the situation.
the process we've had is we protest immediately, so that 60 days kind of freezes for at least the municipality of Anchorage. This really, I think, is for the public. I think this extra 30 days is intended so that the public can see the full packet and have comments that the board can actually look at and review that they wouldn't have to voice because they could be arbitrary, capricious, or unreasonable because they didn't have the packet before them or the full operating plan to actually submit legitimate comments on. So that's what I think this is mainly for, is the public.
So if they deem something complete and then we protest, is that right? Is that before or after, here it says, the board would not be able to consider applications for 30 days. So that consideration that the board is going to do, is that before or after we've resolved our protest?
So they'll do it before sometimes, it kind of depends on so we protest immediately, which means we've sent the municipal stance to the board so that we're within that 60-day window. So because we've replied to them, there's a protest, they can bring it on their agenda. It'll go before them as a conditional protest pending the completion of the municipal process. But that does mean that they can see those applications sooner than the 60 days.
I just, real quick, for the recording, that was Forrest Dunbar, who's been here for about 10 minutes, and Al Hart also joined us. Okay, so what do we do with this then? Do we write a comment, or can we just ask Erica, please let me know as soon as they're filed? Is that not
Yeah,
included by
I
this?
can send an email and kind of clarify if it's gonna change any of the processes with us. Because I do think that it's nice having that initial notice that they've started their application so that, I mean, Mr. Trini asked that we send that email in response to them, letting them know they have all these municipal requirements as well, and I think that's very helpful for them. And then the problems like the residential area and all that are caught right off the bat. So
Yeah, exactly. Dick?
John, this isn't gonna slow the process down altogether. It just allows us to notify the community councils, which always, you were president, I was president, we know the problems they've got, notifying the people.
Yeah.
This will help us.
No, it sounds good.
That was vice president. So, I think Dick is right that our asking for immediate notification is gonna slow it down at all. But I am curious, so after we do that protest, we get the packet, right, so we can start our process. But if they're going to hold off on the public comments, that mean our packets are gonna come without the public comments in them? Or we're gonna wait 30 days until those public comments accumulate and then get our packets?
I don't know. That I don't know. And that'll be something I'll have to ask Erica how they'll, because the board is voting on this today. So if it goes through, then I think we'll find out what their processes are gonna be for it.
But most of the public comments we get, I think all have been in response to our mail, not some
Not
members of
response to the state at all.
Do you get, trying to think of the state, do we see comments from the state at all?
From the state.
Our process is delinked from the states. There are two parallel processes that don't, any public comments submitted by, say, a community council objecting to something at the state level, I don't even know about them. They would have to make objection to it, because it could be different. You could object to the license, but be in favor of the location. I don't know, it's just, there are two different types of entitlements being requested in two different government bodies.
And the state's only sending notice to local governing bodies and the community councils that are in the areas. They don't really deal with the general public. That's kind of left more to the land use portion to notify the residents in the area, so.
Chris?
Yeah, the objection process at the state from a community or individual level is much more arduous, right? It's not as simple as sending an email in. You actually have to find the name of the applicant, find the address, you have to communicate to the applicant before you can submit a complaint to the state. It is quite a process to have a complaint or an objection actually recorded at the state, so. and I-
During the application process?
It's a process, it's not so simple, we had to do it in Fairview because we had an applicant in a residential property that we wanted to make sure it stopped in the state, not brought to the local government. They wouldn't even hear it until it was served to the applicant.
Okay, so anything else on this? So I think now we're informed, and Mandy will ask Erica to let you know as soon as one is submitted as well.
Their process, what they're gonna do with the process and see if we can still get that initial notice.
Okay, good, thanks. So the next one, I guess, what we'll do is, what we're looking at here is the proposed regulations for on-site consumption from the state. And we are looking to, if we have comments on it for whatever reason, clarity or whatever, develop something that we could introduce a resolution on the 26th, our next regular meeting, schedule a public hearing on that for October 10th. If there's a lot of comments that we need to tweak it, we have time to look at it again on the October 24th meeting. And we'd be able to have another meeting with this committee if we needed to fine tune things. So, what we do for, Jen, you kind of see how we do it. So we'll be discussing this, and I generally focus on assembly member comments first, but if you have a comment, just raise your hand and I'll point you out. So let you join the conversation, so feel free to be engaged. But it's not, we're not doing city rules here. It's really, I mean, when I was reading it, I was thinking just, is it clear? Should it come our way? You know, can we understand it? And then what we do at the city level is, we, at this point, we could say none, or we could bust it fairly wide open. So that'll be a separate process. So, all right, thanks. So, Matt, do you want to give us an overview, or how do you want to? Did
I
you
might
prepare for
defer
that?
to
Or let
Dean,
Dean? Okay.
yeah.
Well, I guess this is we're giving you is well, you know, actually, John, I see a bunch of comments. You probably are better off giving an overview than I do right now. But I think this is first, they have an endorsement rather than two kind of license.
Hold on a sec. Did you have a comment?
Put me in your list.
Okay. Do you want to chime in with Dean and Don?
I'll just right now, Dean, my only concern is I want to make sure the state conforms to our secondhand smoke ordinance. We've worked a long time on that, and I have real concerns with the state. I'm told that the state attorney, some attorney that works with the state, first said no, the state could overrule, and then they reinterpreted to say no, they have to conform to our local and secondhand smoke law. So I want to make sure no matter what the state passes relative to this, it conforms to our secondhand smoke ordinance. Otherwise, you're going to have a real huge room to have this hearing in, John. I guarantee you'll turn hundreds of people out. We fought that battle. We're not doing it again.
My view is.
Give me 1 sec. So I emailed it to them. Was I the only one who sent comments in? Did you go through, anyone go through them and have point by point comments? Okay, so did anyone see, you have a copy of the regulations, and I had emailed some just to review, and you guys got copies of that. Do you want to just go through it point by point then, and see if people have, I don't know, just each of these?
Should I respond to Mr. Trainee's comment first? If you would.
Okay, sure.
Well, just briefly, my position is that our secondhand smoke ordinance still applies in our jurisdiction. So regardless of what the state does, it still has local control over secondhand smoke through our ordinance. So whatever they do with the state reg, we still have our needs to allow on-site consumption at the same time. time or secondhand smoke ordinance would be applicable to secondhand smoke.
I just wanna make sure Dean, the state understands that.
Yeah, and I guess I can review that if there's something you want to that effect. That's my usual.
Because attorneys come, attorneys go. Well, I know you're one, no offense. But, you get one ruling from the jury this time, and have another meeting, get a different ruling. I know I've got 3 in the family, you should see dinner at our house. You know, come over. Thank you, Dean.
Sure.
Thank you. Well, just following up on that. Just following up on that. So, I wasn't here when you crafted the secondhand smoke ordinance. As it stands now, is it incompatible with this regulation? That is to say, if the state goes forward with this, but our secondhand smoke as it exists now is on the books, can there not be on-site consumption of marijuana, at least smoke?
Well, I would say maybe yes, because where this is the cruising on-site, and if it's smoke, we must separate area and waste also off that area. And I think I'm just going to go with the second one. So really also says separate, we ventilate the area. But so I kind of needs to be some side version there.
I think the why is it?
Yeah, you guys updated your clean indoor air law in 2016 that explicitly states marijuana, secondhand smoke. So it's part of your local ordinance as it exists right now.
We did that.
It's not allowed.
That still doesn't answer my question.
And add to that, the draft regulations, I'm on page 1 at the bottom, subsection 2, specifically singles out employees of the establishment from consuming, and I think you could argue that being exposed to secondhand marijuana smoke is consuming.
Well, Chris pointed out, my main concern is I don't want the workers exposed for the job to secondhand smoke of any shape, manner, or form. And I'm concerned if you've got this, you're gonna have workers exposed. And to have to be exposed to that as a course of their work doesn't work for me. There's gonna be broke secondhand smoke ordinance the way we did. There is one tobacco agency in town business that does conform to our secondhand smoke law. In fact, Amy went to it. They've got tobacco smoke there. There's no reason you couldn't have one that does marijuana smoke. But the problem is, you've got to have a lot of air filter systems to make this thing work.
I didn't know Amy was a smoker.
She didn't. She went to see if there's actually one there.
Where did you see that in the label? And what's the store?
You'd have to ask Amy. I've never been there.
I think there's one on Fairbanks.
Could be right.
Okay, so, you want to go, you want to just go, it's only a couple pages, we can go point by point, because my comments were point by point. So if you've got, just beginning license marijuana store. Do you want to lead the way, Dean, or?
Not really, but it's
And one zoning out there.
I guess there's 2 types of edibles and inhalation. So the pollution, I guess, in the marijuana concentrates comes out. That's really I guess we want to address. Sorry. So I first say, I think we will go through the prohibitions, they not sell marijuana concentrate. That's, I guess, a policy. I guess that's because we how much concentrate would in person. I guess so much. That's kind of clear and pushing or address that and away from consumption and process. The third prohibition, allowing person to consume tobacco products. Again, John, you have comment on that. Intoxicated or drunken persons, stage or so with or marijuana or marijuana product for intoxicating or drinking person. I suppose that relates to marijuana handlers training and their ability to tell if somebody's intoxicated. I don't know what that training entails. I thinking of the TAN or people who serve alcohol beverages, and it just it's seeming like they're not familiar with what training marijuana handlers will have to identify if somebody's intoxicated. So that's, I guess, would be a concern. Number 6 there, person who consume consumption area, marijuana product is not purchased at a licensed marijuana retail store. You know, some of these products are small and fit in your pockets, so I'm not really sure how that would be enforced. I think a lot of these prohibitions have practical enforcement problems. Number 7.
Practical enforcement problems, you mean like, the retail marijuana business would have customers coming there that they didn't want them to be there, and so their security would get into a confrontation with some of these people, is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, are they going to monitor the infrared to the consumption area? I'm not sure how to get out. It's going to be designed. They're allowed to, I guess, have one point of entry. Risk everybody that comes in to see if they have marijuana product in their pockets, or if it hasn't been purchased at the store. They're not sure receipts of the product. What about those bags, purses, pockets? So I'm not sure how they're going to manage the security to enforce prohibition of bringing the products.
So I would say it's similar to someone bringing a flask into a bar, which does in fact occasionally happen, and it's not possible to totally mitigate that, but a good staff will see if someone's drinking from a flask or pouring into their drink. And so from an alcohol perspective, this is manageable, and I would suggest that similarly, you can have good management or bad management, and, you know, enforcement will be, surely we'll send people in to watch, is this going clean and proper, and if not, then we'll deal with it.
That's an excellent point, and that's one of my interests in this, is that it's, in the liquor license world, you know, that's a regular problem, is off-site consumption, people come back on site and just order a beer, but then they're totally wasted, and the bar will get cited for that, for serving a drunken person, where it's happening outside of their control. I don't know what the solution is, I just sort of raised that as a point, that needs to be considered in this. The other is, there's no mention in here, we started the conversation earlier about how to identify intoxicated persons in the TAM certification process. I haven't, and I could be uneducated on this, but I haven't seen anything similar related to the marijuana industry, training for the people, for the employees, that will allow them to recognize somebody who's coming on premise that exhibits signs of intoxication or whatever, I don't know. But that might be a comment to send back as well.
I thought that was part of the training.
It is for TAM certification, but
I mean to get the marijuana card too, so that you can recognize someone that's already, too high.
for the handler,
or whatever.
okay. Again, I'm uneducated on that,
But I think it is fair to suggest there's an additional certification for public use, you know, because it's a different scenario, people are actually actively using the space. And so it's fair to add that as a request to the training project program.
I think for the training, it might be a good idea to say that people who already have a marijuana handler permit, are they going to train them for this new, I guess, feature?
Right.
If they have received that permits, they choose to train for
And endorsement.
Okay. Francis?
If we're moving off that topic, I just, page 3 of the regulations in the middle, it says, under B, ventilation, if consumption by inhalation is to be permitted, ventilation must be, and then number 3 says, consistent with all applicable building codes and ordinances. So there's a statement in the regulation saying that if there is to be on-site consumption, it has to be consistent with applicable building codes and ordinances. So our local secondhand smoke ordinance and smoking in buildings would be applicable the way that they're basics page says, down at the bottom, it says, be in compliance with local secondhand smoking laws. I think that
That's not there,
That's not
that's,
there.
Felix.
Felix made that. That's a summary sheet that Assemblyman
Oh.
Rivera wrote up.
okay, I got it, I thought they did it. That's a lot of work, Felix, nice work.
Hey, I'm glad it looks like.
Yeah. Well, that's where I think Felix must have pulled from that, yeah.
Chris?
I would just suggest then on number 3 there that we clarify it's building codes and local ordinances, because it could be read to be building codes and building ordinances, right? And so not secondhand or other local ordinances.
Does that make sense, Steve?
Insert the words local forward.
Yeah.
Before
You know,
any of those ordinances proceed.
right.
Does the state have building code?
Yes.
No, it doesn't. Okay. Okay, good. Steve?
I think we put that on page 3. So we went into, I guess, something, delivery of marijuana, right, for personnel session. We've got, as it seems, enforcement issue, practical enforcement issue. Number 8, do we don't know what price that's with the price regularly charged. And I think that's kind of too kind for business, industry purposes.
John, isn't that parallel to the kind of happy hour rules that we have for alcohol? That you have to establish your prices, you can't just throw out prices relative to today to make a special deal, right? And so I think that's kind of parallel to that.
No two first.
Right. They can still have specials on food-based t-shirts or products, just like.
They can't-
Except they can do a week.
They also can't serve food in this area specifically.
Edibles.
No, yeah, they can't, yeah, that's true, but they can't serve food or beverages not containing marijuana.
Right, but the happy hour laws restrict the sale of alcohol at special discounts. Alaska has integrated or kind of evolved with food because they couldn't do the other things. And so, yeah, while they don't have food, the point of that, I believe, is really to keep just kind of the flat prices consistent as possible, you know, parallel to alcohol.
But it's not what I'm saying, it's not really parallel to alcohol because there's an additional restriction placed on marijuana establishments where they can't incentivize people using non-marijuana food where the alcohol folks can.
Do you want to, is that a comment to make?
That's right.
So you're saying that they're not allowed to sell food and beverages if they have a separate consumption room?
According, yeah, on the front page of the.
Because I'm just looking at C, and I didn't.
The front page, it says C, food or beverages not containing marijuana or alcohol.
Well, at the top.
Oh, so that's in there they can do?
Is
Oh,
authorized.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought that was one of the exceptions, like they can't do. All right,
I was
great.
missing something.
My fault.
Right, Steve.
It's, we're getting that down to our prohibitions list on page 2. Down, number 9, and unlimited amount of marijuana for use that could increase the price. So it's not $100 all you can consume. I think it's clear. Prices listed was short. It's like how the hour promotion. Number 11, encourage or permit organized game contest on premises. There's city promotions and alcohol premises as well. Advertise, number 12, advertise or promote practice with really good discussion. I guess page 3, you see application for site pursuit. That's how it speaks and operating plan. I imagine that when we get to our local meetings that we have more details on the operating waters. I imagine that's been used to Title 21. For security.
John, if you look on C2, it says be entirely outdoors in the designated smoking area. You notice we approve marijuana license, we always have that clause in there about odor. How are they gonna get around the odor clause that we have? You've got outdoor marijuana smoke, you have that odor going everywhere. I think we get complaints now. It's gonna be a real challenge.
Yeah, I think there's practical difficulty at the
Things are possible.
outdoors. It seems like the option indoors.
And I mentioned this before, if they wanted to have a smoke-free area for the employees, so they could monitor it, they could just have a camera with, and the employees could monitor a video screen as to what's going on in the consumption room if they wanted to do it that way. Modern technology is amazing.
And also, some proposals I've heard are people would put in just a clear glass wall, so they could actually have eyes on at the same time. But it doesn't need to be cameras that just turn off with the power lights go up, it's literally a wall that's glass.
Okay.
I think what's worth even comment on is housing and employment is monitoring area, going to enforce some rules here. I mean, there's rules against taking other product in or having that's a product there. Someone tries to consume concentrated, they happen to have in their pocket and get in there. How does an employee enforce that prohibition in the area that's walled off? So without actually being exposed if there's smoke in there, you know. You have to enter the area, do you just call out on the microphone?
Operator.
What I've heard is,
or, you know, I'm not really sure.
evacuation, air evacuation systems, they have amazing systems that pull and exchange the air. And so while the folks who are, the kind of cancer folks are making the argument that's impossible, there's no amount, the bottom line is there are systems that can clear a huge room in less than 30 seconds. And so that would be on the person to deal with and invest in the system. It is expensive. $100,000 energy over that. So.
Is that raising your hand for a comment?
Oh, no, sorry, I was demonstrating something.
No, but they actually do clear that air really quickly.
Chris, it's not just clean air people, it's also U.S. Surgeon General. They get the report.
Secondhand yoga
It's really bad. It's really bad. It's really bad.
You know, one thing I think we need to take into consideration is the fact that if we are allowed to have consumption areas, that will be sort of a novelty, I would imagine, especially at first. And I don't think people would want to jeopardize their ability to come back to use the facility by being a bad actor. And because if you get 86 and that's the only consumption room in town, you're out of luck. And so I actually think that there are going to be probably fewer problems than we're anticipating.
Is there no litter in your neighborhood?
No, we have a litter-free neighborhood, oh yeah.
Yeah.
No bears either.
Peter, that was true when you had a problem with people renting marijuana licenses that aren't officially licensed yet. Do you remember when we had the lady on Channel 11 it was, I think? They're still renting a non-licensed place downtown, selling marijuana?
I'm working on that. But the
Sure,
counter to
that's what's going
that,
on.
but the counter to that is the fact that we have now how many licensed facilities
Do you
that
remember
are
Pop Rock?
Well, yeah, but we have how many licensed facilities that are all operating generally within the guidelines and the rules, restrictions, and laws that are set up, and in fact, complaints are minimal, parking isn't a problem. So the fact is, we can imagine a parade of horribles, and we always do, but in this case so far, the experience has been that it's nominal, the number of problems.
Most people have been good players, I'll agree with that.
It's nominal. And so it's fair to, in my opinion, assume that we will have a similar nominal negative impact relative to these businesses because they are held to a higher standard. They're all investing private treasure and they stand to lose that investment if they don't do a job that is up to what the community is demanding. And so that is my response to the idea of potluck. Believe me, or the Alaska Cannabis Club, which I want out of my neighborhood, you know, I talked with Jack this morning about it. What are we gonna do?
Okay, we wanna focus on these right now. So, Francis?
Yeah, just a thought. I think that if it were to become legal within the municipality of Anchorage, that the first one to open up, or the few that ultimately open up under the rules, it would be really popular. So maximum occupancy of the room would potentially, because it's one of those conflicts where the owner might want to see a lot of people go in there because they have some sort of financial benefit, but we would want to see a limit to it, and we have that through maybe building codes. But it was kind of like when Arctic Herbery was the first to open up. We were concerned about parking, we were concerned about the number of customers and the lines and all that. So we'd see a kind of a repeat of that, wouldn't we?
Okay.
I can see the same individual trying to go to on-site consumption there too. Sorry. You brought him up.
Higher standards.
Okay. How are we doing, Dean?
Okay, so I know C1A security. So this is the applicant's operating plan, C1. It's got some sections. And I think that it's just becoming there's a little bit of sloppy drafting here. Maybe that's the sloppy drafting. So it needs a little improvement for completion. At first, A is security. I'm not sure what they mean. I just said Windows. The Windows need to be the type that can't open. What exactly are we saying about Windows and A2? And then I think in B, if you get B and C, B is ventilation, and it starts if consumption by inhalation is strictly permitted. Now C talks about isolation of the marijuana consumption area, and it doesn't actually tie to the consumption by inhalation. But C will allow these three isolating because of consumption by inhalation and consumption by edibles. I don't know why, if you have an area that's consumption by edibles only, it doesn't allow inhalation. It has to be smoke-free. I mean, not smoke-free, but I think it just seems like C should tie into the consumption by inhalation as well.
So on C, for example, change wording so it's isolation of the marijuana consumption by inhalation.
Yes, at least the first and second. Exactly.
I have a question on A3. What is diversion?
I think
Hearing
it's-
out.
I think that they're talking about points of entry, so if you have one point of entry, you'll be able to prevent diversion product outside. I guess that could use some clarification.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
One thing, Dean, maybe Randy, when I was reading this, some of these phrases, do these parallel language in the alcohol regulations? Like serving, but they don't say serving, they say delivery, but I'm thinking serving, and then.
I don't see this goes into a lot greater detail.
But does that phrase, diversion, is that a alcohol?
That's from their other marijuana stuff too. It's from their license applications as well. They have to have a plan to prevent diversion from their facilities and in general.
But can I speak to that? I think if I recall, it's literally, this has to do with site security or property security. And the diversion clause is basically, you need to have a plan so that product, seeds, for example, are not being delivered to your doorstep and left there for someone to just walk up and take. I think it's solely around, they don't actually define diversion in the statutes currently, but the conversation, as I recall, was you just need to be able to secure your site from having, say, when an employee gets distracted and someone grabs material or a product and runs out the door with it. So it's in the current statute, but it lacks definition, and we certainly could ask the control board to create definition.
Francis?
I'm pretty familiar with the state regulations, Title IV for alcohol. I've read them, and that those rules are pretty old and look pretty different. I haven't done a one-to-one comparison about whether or not alcohol regulations have a security thing, like in the warehousing section on where you keep your hard liquor at night and stuff like that. I don't know if it mirrors that, but having worked with Erica, she probably would have done a page one, I think that the way she would have written these regulations for marijuana would have been totally on its own and page one rewrite, and she probably wouldn't have. My guess would be that she wouldn't have used alcohol as a blueprint for how she wanted this to be written, because when you think of like how she worked on with Dennis Wheeler on cell towers, they threw out the old rules and started, okay, we need a complete page one rewrite update of this, and I think there's a corollary with alcohol regulations.
And just to further complicate things, the current liquor statutes deal with the use of the word diversion in an entirely unrelated way. It's more about, it has to do with the penalties that are imposed on a licensee who serves an underage minor. It's part of the punishment. They have to go to what's like known as a diversion court.
And that's where it's confusing. I come from the drug and alcohol treatment universe, and just, it's unclear.
So, quick comments, please, Stefan.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. So we are down C, below C on page.
Well, you see when I want also mention our ID measures to prove access to persons under the age of 21. It's kind of redundant with already a prohibition on the whole retail premises. So it's a little odd that they put that in here.
They check IDs when people walk in the front door, so they'll already have checked their IDs.
That's what it's saying.
If I can add to that, I think the intent here, and again, this mirrors a lot of what's happened in the liquor industry, is that there are actual devices that are used these days. It's no longer up to the discretion of a bouncer to sort of look at an ID and determine if it's correct or not. There's been the implementation of technology-based solutions for verification of ID, and I think that the intent in this is to require on-site consumption facilities to utilize that rather than simply leaving it up to the bouncer or whatever you call it at a marijuana site.
Briefly, what are these technologies?
It's like a credit card machine. You insert your ID and it actually records who you are and when you arrived and verifies that it's a legit ID.
Did you put my driver's license in this thing and it reads the birth date and everything?
Yep.
Or scans, or barcodes it, yeah, scans it.
There were a couple bars downtown that about a year ago started to create this system where they can scan your ID and check to see if it's legitimate. And if you meet the age requirements, it was, I forget the bars that were doing it.
Yeah.
There's some downtown that were doing it.
They also used it to share information with each other on 86 persons.
And I'll just add an anecdote that's personal and firsthand. I was in San Diego with my last license, and they had a system, and the state had encoded someone else's information on the back of my ID. And so my ID was useless. So,
Good enough, right?
yeah. Wow.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Dean, you want to roll on?
So I guess redundancy wouldn't be iteration. We already had some comments on that. To suggest ordinances being the ordinances. Otherwise, I think iteration could also be addressed in meeting our own on-site. So see isolation, the consumption of the is retail store. Hit on that, I think they all it kind of addresses consumption by it should probably explicitly say I kind of feel like something's missing there when they're not addressing isolation or consumption. page 4, I can see there's marijuana disposal packaging. I suppose that's if I have spoke to Joanne, then that's where we dispose of it, and that'll be given to purposes.
What, the way it's set up, it can either be disposed of if unclaimed or repackaged and taken to.
That's huge.
Sealed.
Huge. One, so preventing production, products that sold by the store. I think that there's still is practical enforcement issues. I'm not sure how to do it. Also, number 2, the detailed premises diagram for location. I think that's similar to a site plan. Plans about that, about the only time the issues with that. So the application lists the requirements of the 5B, and I think that's sending those to local government and community council. So everybody would have noticed that the endorsement is being sought by the applicant. Is the number of the fee, I don't know, $1,000, I guess, it's probably just an arbitrary number.
Dean, are we gonna get part of this $1,000 coming to the city, or is that complete money going to the state? Because if we do all kinds of concessions, require additional work on the city to make sure they conform.
You know, we're supposed to get half of the license application fee. I don't know now if it's this endorsement. We should probably find out.
I just like to find out ahead of time.
We should get half as well.
I agree.
That was our competition.
Thank you.
So that, so it's stores, that store holding enforcement. One is destroy all the consumed, but the other is like by me. Yeah, that's what Mr. Constant mentioned.
I would go back to that fee, either half or double that. This is actually not a very substantial application.
$1,000?
So, yeah, I think that that's a reasonable amount, but it can either be half or double, that we get half of that. Because they might have a reason, paperwork, that would be that much. So just find out.
What's the fee now? Is $1,700 for us? What does the state charge?
It depends on the license,
Yeah,
it's about
license
5,000.
What's 5,000? So substantial.
For cultivation, that's the most expensive license there.
Cultivators can also sell joints, I understand.
I'm sorry, I said, how often do they need to review this? It's $1,000 a year. $1,000 a year is,
With their license application fee as well.
which is that full 5,000?
Every year $5,000.
No, that's only for
Oh, for the
cultivation.
initial
Yeah.
number.
Yeah, and it's for
Okay.
So the
cultivation
renewal is
license.
what, half that?
Renewal, state fees, I know our renewals are the first one free.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that a comment then? Double this?
No, just that if they can't split it because they need $1,000, then we should
They should
have-
double it, then we get half.
So right, the 1,000.
Because we're gonna have to deal with the licensing just as well.
Well, the state's not, the state in control of manicures, let alone marijuana.
But annual seems like a lot.
If things continue on the trajectory they're on, these businesses are doing okay once they're operating. And so,
Yeah, but I mean, what's our argument for if they're operating well and the renewal is just going like that, what's the justification for taking $1,000 every year? You know, consumers taking $1,000 every year, it just seems like a lot.
I don't mind not having it, but it just seems like it should be paid for the work that has to do with the licensing process.
I agree with the initial. I wonder, I feel like the new fee, the fee for first time, the new fee should be more than the renewal fee. I think it's kind of crazy that they do it to $1,000 every time. I get why you need $1,000 to process it originally. but I don't understand why you need it every year.
That's a fair comment.
The city doesn't charge right now for renewals, we decided not to, but I do want part of the state's renewal to come to the city.
My understanding is we're not allowed to.
So we can't charge our own fees for the licenses per the state, but currently we're getting half of their new application fees. Their renewals are 600, the ones I'm thinking of are 600, and we don't get any of the renewal fee.
So could we have a comment, 2,000 for an additional 500 for renewals? Throw that out there.
Or at least just say reduce for renewal.
Yeah, reduce renewals and give us half.
I want half of it.
Set it where you need to set it, but we get half and it gets cheaper on renewals.
Do you want to say 2,000 or not specify?
I wouldn't specify.
So-
What do they need?
Just a comment,
Yeah.
you know, one of the challenges that I think you are familiar with is that we've had a lot of interest in budding marijuana entrepreneurs. Many of whom don't have very good business experience or acumen. And across the country, one of the ways to deter from non-legitimate or non-serious people from pursuing these things is to set a high bar through high licensing fees. So that if you are committed to doing a particular thing, you do the due diligence to recoup that initial investment. And that applies not just to things like marijuana licenses, but some jurisdictions, for example, do that with applications for building permits and others. Like they set a bar based on financial state, in a financial state that helps weed out some of the people that aren't thinking about it as much as they should.
Okay, and I can respond to that. First of all, good use of budding and weed.
Thank you.
But
It was cute, by the way.
I'm trying.
we already have, I think we already have an extraordinarily high bar for these businesses, not just through the fees, but also through the regulatory burden. And in this case, it's only, unless I'm mistaken, it's only established marijuana businesses that can do this, right? In this case, I mean, you're someone who's gone through probably the retail, they've already gone through the retail process. And we're asking them to do these very intense things with secure facilities and ventilation. And then on top of that, this $1,000 just seems like the bar is already pretty high.
I think that you have one thing that's not accurate there, that is that I think new applicants coming forward will be currently able to make this application.
Sure,
So-
right. That's true, but they have
I will
to-
concur with you that we have a two-step high bar process when it's cost. The second is the permitting and the kind of zoning restrictions that created all the use of these ancient buildings that people are having to bring up. That's been the number one burden that I've heard from people.
Let's focus on this.
Yeah.
Which is somewhat you are. Do we
Well,
have
it's
a higher
just the
rating?
context around
2,000, we
this.
just say stick to 1,000, lower for renewals.
And give us half.
You want to make that, give us half, that would be a comment on this section. Yeah.
John, how many states have on-site consumption?
Zero.
Zero.
Or one, maybe.
So we're charting new territory. We need to keep that in mind, because you know where you're gonna have this.
$2,000.
$2,000. I want half.
And I don't object, especially if we reduce it year two.
If the annual renewal is significantly lower, then that's not a totally unreasonable ask.
And can we actually create a fee structure based on if you have any complaints? Like if we have to go out and investigate.
Let's
it's not-
save that for another meeting. We'll
Okay.
focus on the strain here.
It seems to me in general, it seems to me like in general the fee, I mean maybe our current fee along the lines of the fee now should be based on half of which approximately covers the state's costs to process the application. So that's saying what amount it should be, it should approximate the cost of processing the initial application, processing and renewal application. And the double that amount, because the state only gives half to cover those costs. So yeah, I don't know if that's an option or, and
So the point would be, the initial fee should be enough so that half of it covers the state's cost.
Dean, I'll probably light the place up, but add CPI into this thing. Because the problem with the state is, they get it static and 10 years later, oh heavens, it's not maintaining. I'd like to add CPI into this. So it adjusts every 2 years based on CPI.
I would also like to compliment you on your use of lighting it up. Just so you know.
We're gonna eat gummies, so there's no lighting involved.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to go back to Mr. Chudy's comments, I do think that whatever fee structure is set up for both the first time and the renewal should be, frankly, for some of the folks who maybe aren't operating to the level that they need to be, should be a barrier for them. So I do think it should be higher. So I'll agree with Mr. Trini that I think 2,000 is a good first start.
This may be the only time, Billy. You need to write this down.
Maybe.
I got a question, Mr. Chairman. So, there might be more than one way for the muni to maybe get a fee. If if the state doesn't want to share, aren't we going to have to inspect this new smoking facility, the smoking room? Maybe we add an inspection to it.
Well, there will be fees charged for all of the normal building permitting processes already. I don't know if we will have to develop, I don't know if we'll have to develop some sort of special inspection fee related to on-site consumption sites because of the unique nature of the ventilation systems, et cetera. I'd have to talk about that with our inspections group, but that, you're absolutely right, that could be one other way that the municipality could recognize some of this.
Okay, Dave? Ryan.
Yeah, a lot of this is yet to be determined on the municipal process, so I'm hesitant to speak on this matter. But right now, we're just discussing the licensing fees, but it is envisioned that we would have a on-site consumption endorsement and special land use permit. So there will be an additional fee for the special land use permit side. Exactly what that fee amount is, we don't know yet at this point, and we also don't know exactly what that special land use permit retail on-site consumption endorsement is going to look like. But that is an additional avenue we can take to get revenue and generate fees.
Okay, we're at 10:06, so we want to focus cleanly on this, and then I want to go through the comments that I emailed in, which is somewhat redundant. So,
I think I got enough to comment for the state that we can address our inspection fees with the so I guess we're at subsection F. There's some requirements of the total destroy it all and continue to run the neighborhood and it says maintain ventilation system. You already have the plan systems, just like our 18
okay.
The comic reduce order should be changed to eliminate odor, because isn't that with the standard we use when somebody applies for a license? No discernible odor?
That's what we do. So were we to make codes for this, we could do that. Is that something, does the state, in any of their stuff, say eliminate odor like we do?
I think it's all mitigate or reduce.
Doesn't stop us from putting it in here and asking them to look at it.
The way they've, the way that they've addressed it or defined it is, does not emit an odor that is detectable by the public from outside the facility, except as allowed by a local government conditional use process.
We don't allow any odor outside.
That's in their current.
That's in the current
Read
regulation.
it again.
Sure. Does not emit an odor that is detectable by the public from outside the facility, except as allowed by a local government conditional use permit.
Could we change, instead of reduce, change it to, recommend they change it to that word?
Sure. Does not emit an odor that is detectable by the public.
That's fine.
You get this down there?
We pay her big dollars. She's so good at what she does.
This is from the current regulations, 3 AAC 306-430. 430, sorry.
Okay, Dean?
I think that in addition, this addresses the ventilation system. If you have in cultivation-based consumption indoors, right? So it's the first one. But nothing here really says what we need to do or maintain the outdoor area. So anyways, next page, number 3 at the top, security plan, city access. For monitor for overconsumption, that relates to the marijuana permit training. 5 warning signs. 6 provide written materials regarding dosage and safety information each time. And I think that what Victoria said is similar to that. Number 7, label all marijuana products. That's already required regulation of labeling companies. A lot of this seems to be just maintain compliance with regulations. Though G, the right of government, local governments to protest. I think this is written almost the same as the local protest section. It's already currently a regulation. I think that this might be an opportunity for us to say that a problem here is the middle of the paragraph says not later than 60 days after the director sends notice of the application, the government may protest. And this is a little different than liquor licenses because it says 60 days after the government receives the notice, and here it's after the director sends the notice. So if the director sends notice, but we don't get it, I guess mailing time or whatever, a week later, we already lost a week of that 60-day period. So that's it's a little bit shorter in actuality than we can have for liquor licenses. And I think we should note that distinction here when we have the opportunity. Is that right? You need to go familiar with the notice issue in order to protest in 60 days?
So we do that right off the bat. So we send the protest as soon as we get notice from the state that there's a deemed complete application. So it's kind of a preemptive protest until they complete all of the municipal requirements. And I would assume we would do the same thing with the on-site application.
I think that what he's saying though is that the way this is written is in reverse of who's the burden is on the state. Puts the
Yes.
burden on us to have received, we lose time, and so it's worthy to make a request that they make it comport with the other section, which is on receipt, because if we've seen one thing, AMCO is under duress with their staffing, and that's right now where we're gonna see problems on their end and on our end.
So they have changed that with marijuana from alcohol. All of the marijuana is from when the director sends it. Alcohol has been when local governing bodies receive it. And I think they changed that on purpose, and now it's continuing on. So that is something that the clerk's office has noticed, and we are working with AMCO to make sure that we receive all of these and we have some way to verify that we're receiving everything. So that is something that we're currently trying to make sure.
I think there's potential for disputes to arise as to the director sent notice. We haven't found it, we haven't received it. But it says it's the director gets to say in 60 days notice starts, even if we didn't see it. So I think that a new approach for licenses.
It might get lost in the mail.
We receive things in time stamp. So that never happened. So I think that's an update.
Twice since I've
Is it in the mail or is it email?
It's email.
It's email, but you can lose an email.
It has happened where we have
It's lost in the
potentially
cloud.
not
Jerry.
received an email that has been sent to us.
Okay, so is that a comment, change it to on receipt rather than?
with a note as to why.
There's a way to a computer to check to see if it was actually received by us. Instead of system that tells you it was received. Because sometimes the state can say we sent it to you, but we haven't a record of it being received. Return receipt or something.
Yeah, return receipt.
But that's not stuff that they have in
So Mandy, on this, just to have a comment that we prefer to have it, clock start ticking on the C, just to flag that, we'll see where they land.
I agree.
Okay.
It would be nice if we could have that change that for the full regs too.
We can throw that in there. Hot luck. Comment.
Not luck. Everyone's doing it now. Everyone's doing it. You're next.
So that's June, and I also have to work one this section in here, not just refer to the local test regulations. Subsection H about this is local government recommend conditions on reimbursements and or imposing conditions. This is also similar to the current regulation on local tests and or imposing conditions on local tests. I didn't see anything that stood out for me, so similar to what's on this.
Okay, and here's why we need additional money. If you read H, if the board imposes a condition recommended by a local government, the local government will assume responsibility for monitoring compliance with the condition unless the board provides otherwise. So, that's the reason we need to have more money, because if we do recommend a condition, the state's gonna take no responsibility for making sure the condition is being met. It's our city officials gonna have to do that.
Speak, of course, it's speak.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Well, the state's just saying if the local governments set up their own rules, they're required to enforce those rules. The state will be monitoring additional rules that we set up. I mean, that's the way I'm reading this.
You know what?
That's the one.
I know. I'm just saying that's another reason we need to increase the amount of money coming in. As we condition, it's gonna cost money to monitor those conditions. And you know how it is with alcohol. You go to community council, they want us to reduce the size of the shooters they can buy in package stores. That'll be no different than marijuana, my friend.
And of course, the state never seems to go and do any enforcement, ever.
Well, when's the last time they did not get off track, when's the last time you saw somebody give an ABC violation for selling to underage kids? The state has lost the money to do those.
Okay, Dean?
I'm not sure, so it's just a comment on that. So, last page, is, the annual renewal. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure about the rebalancing the definition. So then we have, definitions added to 3AC, 306, 990B, definitions for the water section area, and detail on one store prices. I think this was just kind of straightforward.
Definitions.
Those
Okay, thank you. Chris?
I was just going to make the suggestion that earlier our conversation around undefined terms, this might be where we can insert those.
Okay, so, thank you, Dean. We're getting close. I want to go through the comments I sent in, which will be a little bit redundant, so I think we can go through them quickly. And we're at 10:17, and maybe we'll end up going long, because I'd like to give the people who came some time to chime in. Does that work for everyone? Okay. So, does everyone have the email I sent in? Any comments? Did you?
Yeah, there was one.
We got it in there.
The planning department has it in your comments, so I'm.
That's not.
It didn't say Joe.
Which is not, say, yeah, good. Speeds things up.
Okay. We'll work on that.
Did you make copies?
Are they on the table?
Yeah.
I did not, I don't think it's either.
Okay, so I've gone through and I just mentioned this section, so on the probably very beginning, it's just add a word, either by being outdoors, so, A1. At the very end, so on the first page, down about a third of the way. And they just, they mentioned a separate building, but we also allow it. They would allow it outdoors, so it just adds the word outdoors. what it is. It's on the first page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down.
Under bullet 1, John?
Line number 1, JW1.
The first section. And you say they do this later on, so it's just
Well, they
making
mentioned that you
internal
could
consistency.
do, yeah, just internal consistency, and they mentioned you could have outdoors, but here they don't. Here they only mention separate building, a secure door, but not outdoors.
Yeah.
And then the B3. This is the very top of page 2. I took this, is this, maybe I might allow a person to consume tobacco or tobacco.
Just gonna be first
Is that allowed? Is that allowed? I took that as not allowed.
No. So the B above that says a license retail marijuana, so may not.
May not.
This is a not on this.
It's the break, line break. That's here.
Okay. So, yeah, okay, that was how I took it, is that, I would just delete that. I mean, we'll be by our local rules anyway, but if, it just seems bizarre to me, you smoke pot, you can't smoke a cigarette.
Right.
And it just looks ridiculous to me.
I agree, and as Mr. Trainee and I noticed at our community council meeting yesterday, the same comment was brought up.
But cigarettes are nasty stuff.
But we have our local smoking ordinance that would kick in for any of this, so this looks bizarre. Ms. Butler?
And my understanding is that everything that's in cigarettes that's bad for you is also in marijuana. I smoke marijuana as a much younger person. It's even more concentrated, especially in the newer, more powerful. So it's bad in cigarettes, it's even worse in marijuana. Smoke.
And I just add, John, don't forget, these are statewide regulations that are being proposed, and not every jurisdiction is going to have the same restriction on cigarette smoke that we have. And I think that leaving that language in there is a protection for some of the other communities, at least as AMCO looks at it.
Can I let them make their case?
Sure.
Because I mean, my view, it just looks ridiculous, you know. Can we send that in? I'm out of game. We're sending it in as a comment? Okay. JW number 3. Again, this spoke to the enforcement that Dean had mentioned a number of times. So I think we have a comment on that, which is basically how to enforce these things. And that was our comment. Right? So that's already done.
So in the current regulations, there's a section in the marijuana permit handler license section that talks about training for identifying things like this. So I think it's safe to leave in.
I think basically our comment was, how will we enforce this? And maybe that's the response.
Yeah, it's the responsibility of the operator.
Okay, and then JW4 was sort of a definition. We just need a definition. What does deliver mean? Because they use the word deliver, I think, in a context we think like serving a drink.
Provide.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's just an awkward use of that word.
Especially because it can be taken in other ways.
Okay, so is that good? Send that comment in. Define deliver.
Perhaps it should be similar to other places. It says we say we deliver some other sections.
Right, that's throughout. Right. Okay, JW number 5. I'm asking for clarity. I didn't have a specific comment there, but this is in B7.
I didn't think they were allowed to buy an ounce and take it into the consumption area. I thought they were only allowed to buy a gram. Is that correct?
Oh, is it I might have the wrong amount.
That's correct. I don't, because they're not gonna be consuming an ounce in
Okay, I just,
consumption
that's
area.
why that metric stuff threw me. Okay, gram's fine. But shouldn't.
Carry.
Right, basically they're saying there's an area where workers don't have to go, but then they talk about delivery, which I think means serving marijuana. So is this, I just found it clear, are they going into this area, or does it mean they come out and they sell it at the retail?
Yeah, I think all the sales are intended to take place at the retail counter.
Go through. Or I envision like the clear glass wall and a slot, and you
Right.
like feed it into the pen, like a marijuana consumption pen for certain.
Vacuum tube.
Chair Wilson, my only comment is, again, I think that the inclusion of that term from AMCO's perspective, and we don't fully understand that perspective, but is to cover all the bases. And I don't know if they're referencing this, but when I hear the word deliver, I think of the absolute chronic delivery service, and perhaps this is their way of ensuring that you can't be on-site, order a pizza and order marijuana and have it delivered to you while you're on-site.
You're thinking it's an external source, yes. Okay, so this is not clear at all.
It is unclear, but I think that's why they put it in there, as it covers a lot of bases.
Okay, so definition is simple, so, okay, so on my number 5 then, it, I guess hinges on just define deliver. It's kind of redundant.
So one course of action might be, prior to submitting final comments to the assembly, it sounds like a lot of the comments we've had today are questions more than anything. Perhaps we could put those together for delivery to AMCO and hopefully get some answers before you have to consider your final resolution.
Well, that'd be fine too, but our comments can be questions too, which guide them.
It's up to you.
They had 2 periods. You have to send questions if you want to get answers. I think it was October 17th for September 17th. September 10th.
It was already passed.
I think it's in October. Yeah.
Well, maybe it's in that.
The deadline for comments is October 27th, and they said if you want questions to be answered by MCO, send them 10 days before the close of the week. So before October 17th.
Well, I think it makes sense, but we could send in the questions and get answers. Really, there's no harm in that.
Yeah.
Guys, I have one more meeting in between getting the answers and 27th. I think the 27th is Friday.
Yeah. Okay, so
10 days before for questions.
JW number 6.
And you can send questions after, but you won't get answers.
Number 6 is, I don't think I changed the intent. They just, I think they have redundant stuff here. The goal is just to prevent cut rate prices. So I recommended deleting 8. And then on 10, deleting on any, I'm on page 2, middle of the page. So delete 8 and reword 10 to say on it, delete the words on any one day. It just seems awful odd. I mean, it's like they only can change their prices on Sundays. Or retail. It's just bizarre. So
The way I read number 10, Chair Wilson, is if you had, for example, a frequent buyers club that guaranteed special pricing, I think this is a prohibition against having tiered pricing systems.
Well, I think phrasing 10, in product on any one day, basically it says you have to charge what you charge the general public.
Precisely, so it rules out some sort of special benefit for anybody, like a frequent buyers club or punch card or something like that.
Does the phrasing I offer go against that, or
But I think yours is fine, yeah.
is deleting 8 a problem?
Except that if you accept your edit on number 10.
I think the distinction in what they wrote between 8 and 9 is 8 just to prevent a discounted price special for everybody, and 10 is to prevent a special price for certain people. customers should pay your price. I think that's the difference between the intent.
Yes.
This closely parallels the alcohol rules. I'm looking at the pricing and marketing of alcoholic beverages, and it's parallel to that language.
Each of these 8, 9, and 10.
It's offer, deliver as marketing device to public free drinks, deliver alcoholic beverages to a person already possessing 2 or more. Sell or offer, deliver alcoholic beverages to a person at a price less than the price regularly charged for one beverage during the same calendar week, except at private functions. So the happy hour restriction is you have to set your price per week, and then it goes on to you encourage games and contests or deliver beverages to a person or group on any one day at a price less than those charged to the general public on that day. And so this literally is parallel to the alcohol rules on happy hour and marketing.
So someone must understand it somewhere, though. It seems awful bizarre.
They were attempting to make it so that, and this was years ago, people weren't offering happy hour
Right,
discounts to drive
I understand.
customers in. And so what they did, instead of having a daily price, and in fact, I think at one point they had to submit the pricing list to the AMCO, to the ABC. I don't think they have to do that anymore. But it was just an attempt to reduce that kind of marketing.
And if it's, okay, well, I withdraw 6 then, if it's working at alcohol. Anyone else? Okay, and then JW7, this is where they talk about an outdoors, so this is on, where you go, 1C. Try to find the page.
At the bottom of page 3 now. Sorry.
Well, they say it's entirely outdoors, and I think, why would they have to, why restrict it there? Either you have indoors or outdoors. You might have a covered area that has a porch, or an indoor area has a porch or something, I don't know.
I think
It seems odd to require that.
Yeah, it's an unusual situation, but take, for example, a Hot Quarter Grill in downtown Anchorage that has the entire front facade opens, and then the restaurant can effectively spill out onto the sidewalk. Are you going to classify that outside area as a smoking area, but the indoor remains a normal retail establishment? Then you don't have any separation between the two uses, or the smoke, I guess you could say.
Well, this says it all. All this says it has to be separated. Should we do this in Anchorage, you have our smoke, I mean, all those rules would still apply. But it's, you know, I can just imagine, I mean, about the only place this seems like it would ever work anywhere would be if you're out in the boonies, in the middle of nowhere, where no one can smell it outside. And if you have a retail area, then a separate room that lets you out on a enclosed, and I think Choku Charlie's has an outdoor smoking area. This seems to work. And I think theirs is only outdoors.
Entirely outdoors.
Right, so it is entirely, but why preclude, they had 10 feet indoors or something, it was ventilated under all the other rules. Just seems like, I don't know why they would shut the door on that.
It's been many years, but I remember the Cabin Tavern, they have an outdoor area, but they also have kind of a little shed, so it's kind of partially indoors and partially outdoors. For smoking, there are birds. I see your point about entire, and during winter time, I suppose you might want to have at least some areas, at least that roof over it.
Right. Yeah, that's my thinking. Chris?
Well, I think that this doesn't preclude that. It just precludes it from being contained within the retail area. Like if you read that language there, it says from other retail areas. And so you could have a 3-walled structure or a ventilated room. You probably could have both outdoor and indoor if you put that in your site plan. But what you can't do is have it open into your retail area. That's how I read that.
Entirely outdoors, designated smoking area, or separated by a wall or something.
From your retail.
What if you delete entirely, did you change it?
It doesn't matter, I don't think, but I think that you could configure it in any way as long as it's separate from your retail. That's how I read it.
Okay. You want to move it consistency at, or in a separate building. Or just add that in.
Like separate building or separate room?
No, they talk about being able to have your smoking area in a separate building on the premises. So, and that's just left out here. Here they talk about outdoors, separated from the retail, but it doesn't refer to in a separate building, which is allowed. So it's just really just for consistency.
So are you adding, are you deleting the or that exists currently, replacing that with a comma, adding a new comma at the end of secure door, and then your phrase or in a separate building? So it's a list?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
get that, Mandy?
I think so. Okay. So we're removing entirely from II.
C,
And then-
double I, yes.
And then delete the word or and add a comma. And then after the phrase secure door, add another comma, and then John's new phrase or in a separate building.
Okay, any opposition to that? Okay, 9 we dealt with extensively, so moving on to 10. Oh, this is, maybe this is someone in planning, you know, they talk about the premises. I think of a premises, does that mean a building in the vernacular? Because if you have a separate building, so I have my retail building here, and we allow this, and in a separate building have the smoking. And they say the premises includes the two. Does it include a walking area in between? Does the premises mean a lot?
The premises would mean, the whole lot, meaning everything it is. So it's, for our perspective, it'd be a site plan plus a floor plan that would be provided.
Typically,
That's
it's
what
the
I-
license area.
That's what I think. I don't think it's very confusing with us. Because when they talk about it, retail says means an area encompassing both the retail marijuana store and any marijuana consumption area. They don't say the lot.
So it's the license area.
Yeah, if the state's requirements for what you need to provide for a premises diagram is quite different than ours. They're a little more lax, I should say. We require everything to be scaled, dimensioned, include the whole lot, include everything, so we can make a detailed analysis. So we can require site plan and floor plan. The state may differ from that, does not require that. They may just want to see what the actual licensed premises is.
So, okay, so would we be precluded from doing, when they say local rules are allowed? I don't want to be limited, because I think of it the way you think of it. But the way they define it here is not that way.
And they can keep what they need for theirs, and we write ours, we would do it with what the municipal requirements would be. It would be more stringent, which is okay.
Okay. Okay, so that was, we can ignore that then. Okay, so that was my comments. So we have quite a list. You want to go through it? Trust your.
Or what I have.
We'll have it back in front of us.
Do you want, why don't you
Yeah,
write it
I
up?
can write it up and send an email out to everybody, and then, hopefully get some more comments back.
Okay,
Or
cool.
if I miss something, add it in.
Okay, can we, is Alicia?
Eliza?
Eliza, I'm sorry. Did you have some comments on?
Well, we're gonna submit our own comments, of course, but, I mean, as written, the proposed ventilation requirements,
Wendy?
I'm Gloria Mandy. Yes, I have some comments. And matter of fact, yesterday I sent an email. I apologize, it was late in the 3 o'clock, I think, in the afternoon, and you may or may not have seen it. I'm pretty convinced because through DHSS and other organizations, we have heard, been informed that there is no air cleaning system that really would control the particulates coming out of smoke, being tobacco, marijuana, whatever you call it. So I think that if you pass the regulation as written, and I need the assurance that it's not going to trigger the reopening or the tobacco smoking facilities throughout Anchorage and the state. And I've not heard an Attorney General opinion, I've not seen the state, the legal department issue an opinion. Until that is completely cleared, there is no concurrence to that. Although we have no objection under the restriction, personally I don't, about the consumption of the edibles. You know, I understand the request came from a business point of view. They want to increase their sales, and there's nothing wrong with that. But because of that, we cannot really flip over all the fight that's been fought, and with great reason, against tobacco. And you know, if you want to make it very personal, a personal experience of illness or death related to tobacco in my immediate family. So I'm not soft of that, you know. And because I belong to the Turnagain Community Council, although I do not represent them here, I want to point out that yesterday the board of the Community Council sent out a 3 pages a list of comments that I would appreciate if you can go through. And again, I'm very glad that we agreed, they have no objection to the edibles, but great concern about the smoke. Thank you.
All right, thanks. One highlight, one point in the Turnagain Community Council comments right near the end, they said that in the kind of authorizing regulations for marijuana, it was out the gate, they had different categories. They had retail, production, testing, cultivation, and that there was no provision for on-site consumption. But Mandy says that in fact there was a kind of place mark in the regulations for on-site consumption. And that's what kind of triggered our resolution, go figure that out, and that's what they're doing now.
Well, and just a point of clarification, this did not come from a business perspective to increase profit, but in fact, because they're consistent and it's slowed down now, but complaints about our parks in the tourist season being utilized as public consumption areas. And so that was why I brought this forward. It had nothing to do with profits.
Excuse me, I find no problem with profit, but also and I continue on that, when you mentioned, I remember in one meeting, Mr. Constant, that you referred to smells downtown, you know, marijuana smell. But so how come that, you know, we have open areas? How do you control smell? It is impossible. So there's a conflict about this also, the old smoking issue that there's a lot of questions.
That's the difference between the state and the local regulations that will eventually come, is that our rules probably will make it impossible to have an outdoor public smoking place for this because of the smell. But other issues can be resolved. And so we'll see what the local product becomes if the state moves forward with this.
Cross that bridge should we get to it.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Mark?
Yes, Mark.
I'm really sorry, Mark.
That's okay. I had to step out and talk to my Chad, my personal Secret Service agent. Swear to God.
Did you give me your 20?
I haven't yet. We took a fake $20 bills from our farmers market this year and this week, and they come and grab those things from the island. So I'm in general against on-site consumption in bars. Marijuana bars, whatever you want to call them. Because I don't think we need a whole series of new bars, liquor bars where you can't smoke cigarettes or marijuana or anything, and then a whole series of marijuana bars identically. I think there's a very fragile coalition that brought this brought marijuana in. I voted for it. I know many people that didn't, however. And I think once they found that there could be a series of marijuana bars, if you would, whatever term you use, I think that coalition could change, both locally here and in state. The main reason I'm against specifically the smoking thing is unintended consequences. Butler and Berkowitz, two people in Anchorage, one famous, I'm not. I voted in favor, against the reduction of liquor bar hours many years ago. We used to be able to drink 23 hours a day and had to close for 1 hour. But I thought a bunch of do-gooders, they're trying to get rid of alcohol consumption. So many years later then, I was calling in, I listened to, before he was mayor, Ethan Berkowitz, talk on the radio, and someone said, yeah, why can't you, part owner of a bar, why can't we drink 23 hours a day? And he said, yeah, really, whatever time of day you want to drink, that should be up to you. So then I called him and gave him a little information, and he went, oh, right. The main overriding reason for doing that was that at 5 or 6 o'clock, whenever it was, people were driving home drunk when that bar closed. So there were these 3,000-pound or more missiles of people, intoxicated people, going through the incoming traffic. So you wanted to go to work in the morning, you had to risk doing dodgeball with these people. So my understanding from the police when I was on the Anchorage's Public Safety Advisory Commission is, at that time when we instituted these reduced hours, the number of people getting killed by this drug.
This is a important point. We want to focus on comments to the state regarding the
yes.
regulations.
So I think this is going to mean more stone drivers. Many would not be, but still. I think there'll be more law enforcement expenses also for us, because who's going to go into the bars? Who's going to enforce that? More smells in the neighborhood. As Assemblyman Rivera said on his sheet, we'll vent them outside. Well, into the neighborhoods, we don't want that. That's counter to the law. So I think there's a violation here. So, and most importantly, I'm against the smoking consumption, because that means more carcinogens inside and out. And talking to experts in the field, they say repeatedly, all from the top experts in the country down, that there is no way to effectively clean this. So I'm going to be organizing a group of people to fight on-site consumption, especially of smoking statewide. And I hope you will, as representatives, understand the health and expense and fiscal consequences of supporting this.
All right, thank you. Anything else? I think we're done.